Hi, I'm Ben.
And I'm Josh.
And this is the Bad Magic Podcast, a podcast about games, life, and other things. And welcome to episode 66.
So, Ben, what's 2,448 miles long and goes through 8 states? Kind of.
Yeah, Route 66, man.
Route 66, that's right.
Yeah.
So, it was the Oregon Trail back in the Dust Bowl days. That's like the most interesting fact that I can think about Route 66. Yeah, everybody oh man, we got to go west to find our future or whatever. Just packed up, got on Route 66 and drove to Santa Monica.
I think the geniuses at Pixar really captured the essence of Route 66 in the movie Cars. You know, they showed the good old days of small gas stations and little towns in this meandering road that went past all the beautiful scenic sights. And then the giant freeways came and cut through all the hillsides, and all of that became a thing of the past.
This is one of those moments where our generation gap is really obvious because, yes, this is the U.S. interstate system superseded Route 66, and I'm happy for that. I can get to where I'm going faster. I'm a millennial. I'm all about that destination, baby.
This is a classic dilemma where you have this nostalgia for the things of the past, and the good parts about it is what you remember, but you don't remember the bad parts, like you just said, not getting where you're going very fast.
People talking about road trips like multiple days. Like, oh, we have to stay at a motel. Like, that sounds terrible.
Yeah.
Compare
the new stuff to the bad things about the new stuff to the good things about the old stuff.
That's probably one of our biases. We'll have to come across that one later.
I think you're right.
Skewed or slanted comparisons. One last thing that I want to mention on this is that Route 66 goes through 8 states, and everywhere you look at it, Route 66, 8 states. And I was thinking about that and reading it. I'm like, wait a minute, Route 66 doesn't go through Kansas, does it? And I look on a map, and if you're on like the nation scale, like if you have all of the United States on your monitor, like it barely touches the corner of Kansas. And you have to really zoom in until you can see like, okay, yeah, I guess it does go through Kansas, but only in the most technical sense.
Okay.
11 miles. It's a total of 11 miles in Kansas. It goes north for like 5 miles and then east for 5 miles, and then it's back into Missouri. It totally could have skipped Kansas if it wanted to, but I guess it just wanted to be generous.
I had a friend in the UK that was a little bit, I don't know, we're called Anglophiles if we're non-British people who are fans of the English culture and history. And I don't know what it's called if they're British and they're a fan of American culture and history, but he had told me it was his dream to come to the United States, take 2 weeks, and drive all of Route 66.
Oh, man. Unnamed listener whose dream is to drive Route 66. Get a better dream. Like, you're that's a really low bar, and you're going to be disappointed.
Easy for us to say. I heard this great quote that I use in a paper I wrote this week. It is, to an Englishman, 100 miles is a long way, and to an American, 100 years is a long time.
Oh, that's interesting. I like that. I actually
was like that.
I have firsthand experience with that. When I was in high school, I dated a German foreign exchange student, and her mom came out to visit for a couple of weeks while we were together. And she asked me where I was going to go to college, and I told her the Air Force Academy in Colorado. And she goes, "Where is that?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't know, like a couple thousand miles away." And she just flipped her lid, like, "Oh, you Americans and your distances. It's crazy. Nonsense. It's insane." I'm like, yeah, I get it now, looking back. Like, what I was telling her is like, yeah, I'm basically going to school in Siberia for all she could understand.
So the thing I noticed about them is like, even just driving across their island, which is only like 600 miles top to bottom, they still just feel like a little bit of distance is really long. And the idea that we think of 100 years as a long time, whereas to them it's not at all.
Man, I had to drive 40 minutes to take my kid to an arcade today. And that's just, that's not even halfway across town. That's just like where you go to go do stuff.
All right, Josh. So last time we mentioned that you were going to write an article about your new keyboard, but you hadn't yet, and now you have, so it's up on the website, badatmagic.live. So, folks, this is Josh's best article under Josh's Random Thoughts. It's really good. So if you've ever thought about getting another keyboard, or you want to know what the landscape and the keyboard purchasing environment is like, this is the place to go.
Man, you're like the third or fourth person that has said that. And I was super proud of my computer setup article, but everybody's saying, oh, that keyboard article was great. And I'm like, really? I mean, it's just about keyboards.
Yeah, it's quite good. I'll put a link in the show notes.
Well, thanks, buddy.
Well, since we're mentioning things from last time, Josh, I'm guessing you got a correction from a listener on a fact that you gave out.
So I was out on the town today with my son and my dad doing that 3-generation like boys' day hanging out.
Awesome.
And my dad was talking about speeding tickets, and I don't know why, but it's like a bolt of lightning struck me, and I remembered I do have speeding tickets in my past. And I also remembered saying explicitly on this podcast that I had never received a speeding ticket, and so I have to correct myself. And
my guess when I saw that you put this up for a correction was that your mom was listening. She's like, Josh, don't you remember you got those speeding tickets? And you're like, oh, yeah. So you're saying you just remembered?
Yeah, I completely blocked out. Like, everything that I do bad just goes into that dark part of my brain, and I don't remember that stuff.
You forgave yourself.
There you go. I got 2 speeding tickets, and I think this is why I don't remember them, because one of them I totally disagree with. Like, one of them is just total ridiculous nonsense.
Okay, go ahead. What were they?
Okay, so the first one that I think is that it should be expunged from my record, and it's ridiculous that it hasn't been. I'm driving through my neighborhood where I used to live, not now, but before. And okay. I was one full mile away from where the elementary school was, like not on the same road. The elementary school was 1 block on a different road away from me, okay? But for some reason, they decided that this other road that crossed my road at a T intersection that would take me, if I turned right on this road, it would take me to the elementary school a mile in that direction. They decided that intersection is a school zone. What? And so I was going through there at 40 miles an hour. It's normally a 35, but it was a school zone. So I'm supposed to be going 15, and I got clocked by a photo radar.
Was it on a school day?
Yes, it was in the middle of the day. There was nobody for miles because the school was a mile away down a different road.
Okay, so it was in the middle of the day, like the kids had already gone to school.
Yeah, the kids were at school.
Okay. Weird.
But there was a photo radar booth sitting there, and I was going more than 15, and I got my picture taken. And yeah, speeding ticket number 1.
Okay.
Speeding ticket number 2, I have no defense. I was speeding. It was also in the middle of the day. It was also in a school zone, and this time the cop pulled me over.
What's with you in school zones?
Because I'm going the normal speed limit. But it's the middle of the day on a work day, and I was a pool guy. I drove around everywhere all the time. It's like I ain't got time to go 15 miles an hour for a mile when there's nobody around me. I can't see anyone. I couldn't see anyone, including the cop that pulled me over. So, I mean, how was I being dangerous? It was a school zone. I broke the law, and I deserved it. And I paid the speeding ticket. I didn't even contest it. I didn't do any of the court stuff, nothing. I just paid it, and there, I have gotten this guilt off of my conscience. I can feel the judgment of all of our listeners. Let's move on.
That was good. I do have to tell you about one, though. It's the weirdest ticket I've ever gotten. And this was in Oxford in the United Kingdom. Oxford as in the famous town of the old university that is considered a good university, Oxford University.
As opposed to Oxford, Michigan, known for like their boxes. Like, what are you talking about?
Yes. Or the shoes. I don't know. So I was driving in Oxford, and I was trying to find my way around, and it's not like you think. Like, I imagine some of the most beautiful and picturesque college campuses I've seen in the United States, and I imagine that Oxford's going to be like that. There'll be places around the outside where you can park, and you go on, and there's grassy gardens that you walk between different buildings and see all the historic sites.
This is England. Everything was built hundreds of years ago. Oxford's probably a castle, and they didn't even have cars back then, so there's no parking.
Right. And the town is just a town, and the colleges are kind of at different places in the town. The engineering college is in one part, and the English college is another part, and they're not connected. There's just a town in the middle of it. So, anyway, I went there to see it and partake in the environment. Colleges are one of my favorite things to go see. And I was driving through town, and I was trying to get from one of the campuses to another, one of the colleges to another. And my GPS was telling me where to go, and I followed it. And it was fine. I went and enjoyed my time in Oxford and went home. And like a week later, I got 3 tickets in the mail. And they were all pictures of my car in Oxford. And it was because I had driven in a, like, mass transit vehicle only zone.
Okay, your GPS was taking you up the bus-only roads.
My GPS took me in the bus and taxi only roads, and there were signs, but I was just following my GPS because apparently they hadn't updated the maps in Google Earth or Apple Maps or whatever, and so it just drove me right through the taxi zones, and I got 3 tickets in Oxford.
Yeah, anybody at Google and Apple that are listening that haven't updated the maps in Europe, like, I don't blame you. It's fine. Who drives there?
Oh my gosh, I feel like such a sucker.
You should have been walking. Your GPS should have said, turn around, park, and walk.
I mean, you get the old joke of, like, if your GPS told you to drive off a cliff, that there's some people out there that would do it. And it was kind of like that. I mean, there were signs everywhere. There were hash marks on the ground, and there was signs on the buildings and stuff. And I was like, well, it says to go down this street, and it looks fine. And I went down it. The bus drivers were probably shaking their fists at me, and I got 3 tickets.
Well, it's fine. It was in their fake money anyway, so it wasn't really.
All right, that's all I had as far as follow up and stuff from last time. But I think you had a bad at parenting for this week.
I do have a bad at parenting. So there I was, Ben. Let me paint you a picture with my imagination brush. I was folding laundry in our great room. We have a pool table. I don't know why. We have played pool on it twice in the decade that we've owned it. We have a big cover on top of it so our cats don't destroy it. So basically it is the permanent laundry folding table in the middle of our house. So I'm there folding a load of laundry, and my kids are watching Star Wars in the other room, okay?
Yeah.
And he's watching one of the good Clone Wars cartoons that came out when I was a lieutenant in the military. I don't know if you've seen these ones, the hand animated, not the CGI ones, but the hand animated Clone Wars cartoons. And I got caught up, and I'm slowly slowing down as I'm folding clothes to the point where I recognized at some point I had just stopped, and I was standing there watching the Clone Wars cartoon. And I was watching General Grievous, the robot with 4 arms, absolutely decimate 6 Jedi and their Padawans simultaneously. And this guy was like a wrecking ball. There's no stopping him.
Yeah.
And the Jedi were terrified before he showed up. And I was thinking to myself, Grievous was so awesome in these cartoons.
Yeah, how did Obi-Wan take that guy on with one lightsaber, honestly?
It was such a joke. He was such a joke in the movies, and it's so disappointing. But do not get me started. Spoilers for Star Wars, everyone. But I was watching this, I started a rant, and I'm like, man, you kids are so lucky. And my son paused it. He looked at me and goes, what do you mean? I'm like, you guys are you're tripping over Star Wars. You walk around this house and there's so much Star Wars to consume. When I was a kid, I had 3 Star Wars movies, and they were on VHS, and we only had 1 VCR in the house, and it was hooked up to the main TV, and I never got to go watch it because I was
You're hitting him with all these 3-letter acronyms you probably didn't know.
Well, not only that, but then I got 80% through it, and I realized, holy crap, I'm giving my kids an uphill both ways story about watching Star Wars.
You totally were.
I was.
All right, I have to rewind your story a bit and pause you. Did you just say that you said to your son, you guys have it so lucky, and then your son paused his cartoon, stopped what he was doing, looked at you, and asked you a clarifying question? Is that what happened? That really happened to you in real life?
You know what? Now that you're saying it to me, yes. My son is so spoiled by entertainment. He just knows that the entire universe of consumable media will wait on his every whim.
Not that he was interested enough in what you had to say that he was willing to stop the continuity of the cartoon.
Oh, no, I've beaten that into them.
All right.
Thou shalt look at me when I'm talking to you.
Okay, it wasn't just that was an intriguing thing my dad just said. I want to know more about this.
No, it was more, I need to pause this and look at him or I'm going to get in trouble.
Oh, all right. Well, that was a lot lamer than I was expecting.
And the funny thing is at the end, I was saying this rant and I had stopped, and my wife came in the room who are you talking to? I'm like, I am lecturing your children on how lucky they have it. And it just all was crashing down on me oh no, I've turned into my parents.
So she didn't give you the reality check that you were giving them, the uphill both ways story?
She kind of catalyzed it in my brain. Oh, this is what's happening. Dang.
I see. Man, I can't think. I always delivered those tongue in cheek. It sounds like you started off doing it in earnest and then realized what was happening.
Yep. And then it turned into tongue in cheek.
Okay.
But still, like letting them know, like, you kids have no idea how lucky you are when it comes to freaking TV shows and media.
Yeah. There's so many things like that. I don't know if I ever stopped giving that lecture.
Ben, you lectured me on that earlier in this podcast.
Yeah.
You were talking about Route 66. Like, oh, you kids are just so obsessed with getting where you're going. Yeah, slow down. See the sights. Walk around the college campuses. Like, drive on the wrong roads and get a Frosty.
Yeah, like that. That sounds nice. It's funny because I'm married. My wife is also the, like, get where you're going person. She's just like, we got to go. Like, pee in a cup. Like, we're getting there where we're going. Not really. She doesn't do that kind of thing. But I like to stop and be like, that looks interesting. Let's stop and look at that. Like, why are we in such a hurry to be at the destination?
So this is the last big trip that we went on was a couple years ago, pre-COVID. We went to Legoland. And when we were going there, we were dead set focused. Like, we are getting to where we are going because that's where the fun is. And we are going to have all the fun. But on our way back, totally chill. Totally different environment. We're going home. We're going to take it easy. This is the last bit of our vacation, so we're going to savor it. We stopped at an old retired airplane museum and saw a blackbird in the hangar, which was awesome. We stopped in this podunk town in the middle of absolutely nowhere and found the local restaurant and sat down and had a breakfast burrito and
That's great.
just really eased our way back home.
I love that you're able to do those kinds of things, do both of those in the same trip and kind of change gears.
It was really nice, yeah. It was my wife's idea. She's the one that comes up with all the great ideas.
My parents are visiting from out of town right now, and we have this favorite little Cajun Southern Louisiana style cooking restaurant. It's way on the other side of town, and it's in this old converted service station that, like, used to be like an automotive garage with a gas station and stuff, and it's just completely converted, but it's very charming. And you go in and you just order, and then they call and you come pick up your food, and you get like shrimp with the head still on, and gumbo and jambalaya and beignets and all that kind of stuff. So we went to go down there tonight, and along the way there was cop cars everywhere. And I'm like, oh crap, I forgot. And they're like, what? I'm like, it's Mardi Gras, and we're in Louisiana.
Your parents are in town, and you just forgot that the most interesting thing that happens in your state is happening?
Yeah, well, we're new here, and the most we'd seen was the weird king cakes they have in the grocery store with the purple, yellow, and green icing on them, and apparently a little plastic baby Jesus baked in somewhere. So,
Ben, I love you to death, buddy. You know I do. But this is one of those times where, like, you're always out there embracing life and just having all these great experiences. But, like, have you been topless in a Mardi Gras parade yet, covered in beads?
So that was part of the dilemma that happened. So we started talking about, should we go see this Mardi Gras parade that's happening tonight that all the cop cars are going on for? We're like, I don't know. It just felt like a little bit too dangerous of a spontaneous thing to do. Do we know if it's going to be like New Orleans style where people are handing out the beads and everybody's drunk? Or is it just going to be like the Northern Louisiana version where it's just more tamer and it's an electric lights parade?
Well, you'll never know because you didn't go experience it for yourself.
So we went past, we made it through all the cop cars and stuff to the restaurant on the other side, and there was a bunch of people already there drinking, and they were dressed up. And man, these get-ups for Mardi Gras are absurd. I mean, they were wearing like head-to-toe sweatsuits and overalls that were all just gaudy purple, green, and yellow, gold glitter hats and glasses. It looked like a New Year's party.
And so, of course, you bought half of their clothes off of their back and joined in the fun.
You know, I have a very spontaneous side of me, but when I have a big group, it's like my spontaneity is inversely proportional to the size of the group I'm associated with, that I'm responsible for.
I see. The flexibility of the group decreases with increased population.
Yes. Like when I'm by myself and I'm driving through West Virginia, I'd be like, oh, there's a game going on in this football stadium. I'm there. But, you know, if I have a car full of people, we barely stop for gas.
How many cars did you take to this restaurant?
One.
Just one. How many people were in your party?
9.
9. How long was the meal planning to be?
Hour and a half.
Okay. So here's what you do. You order some appetizers to go, and then you say, all right, whoever wants to see some topless women, come with me. We'll be back in an hour.
Yeah, I think that was a fear that something like that was going to happen.
Fear. Fear is the wrong word in this scenario, but I'll let it slide.
It is time for Bad at Logic. Because it's an even number, I will have a fallacy today. And we're going to use one of my favorite fallacies, and it is called No True Scotsman.
No True Scotsman?
It could be anything, but this one is No True Scotsman. Making what could be called an appeal to purity as a way to dismiss relevant criticisms or flaws of an argument. So this one is like, it's kind of hard to understand at first, but once you get it, you know what it means. It's like you just create this unattainable ideal for some in-group or population, and then therefore no one can fit the ideal, and you can always just use it. So let's say, for instance, what's an in-group I want to talk about?
No politics.
Yeah, I was trying to think of a better one than that anyway.
Bikers.
Okay, let's say Cowboys fan.
Cowboys fans, okay.
So, you're like, oh yeah, I went to a Cowboys fan once, and I've liked him ever since the Troy Aikman era. You're like, oh, you're not a Cowboys fan, no True Scotsman.
Oh, I'm all about this. Deadpool. Deadpool's one of my favorites. Like,
okay, good.
Deadpool's great. All those movies were fantastic with Ryan Reynolds. I'm like, I'm going to stop you right there. If you haven't read every single Deadpool comic before any of those movies were even talked about, then don't come at me with your fake...
You're not a true Deadpool fan.
Don't come at me with your fair weather Deadpool, okay? Like, I was a fan of Deadpool long before he was popular or cool.
Yeah, and Ryan Reynolds was Deadpool with his mouth sewn shut once. Which, worst cinematic decision ever.
So, this is the thing, though. Ryan Reynolds was probably the most diehard Deadpool fan that can ever exist because, one, he accepted that role because it was Deadpool, fully knowing that it was not the Deadpool that it was supposed to be, but he just wanted to be Deadpool that bad. And two, he single-handedly made those Deadpool movies happen. So, I mean, I will say that the one true Scotsman in this discussion is Ryan Reynolds.
Well, he did stick with it long enough. Yeah. So you could say you do tend to go to No True Scotsman a lot when you talk about being a comic book fan. That's a good one.
Listen, all you nerds out there. I remember when I was a freshman in college and people still talk to me like, you play video games in your spare time for fun? Yeah. And now everyone's just video games are a thing and it drives me nuts. Don't come appropriating my nerd culture, okay? I was a nerd long before it was popular, long before it was cool, and all you Sally-come-latelys can just beat it.
What do you feel like you're defending when you do that?
I feel like I'm defending the years of abuse and emotional scarring that I have from...
Interesting.
I had to earn my nerddom, and people are just showing up buying ironic t-shirts and be like, oh yeah, I played Dungeons & Dragons once at a drunk college party. I'm totally a nerd, and I just want to kick them in the teeth.
Okay, so the Cincinnati Bengals made it to the Super Bowl this year, and they hadn't even been to the playoffs in 30 years. So, there could have been people who are buying Cincy gear and waving their flags and stuff, and anyone that's been a fan since before the last time they made the playoffs is like, you're not a true Scotsman. You're not a real Bengals fan.
Yeah.
We stuck with them all those years. We took all the abuse, all the heartbreak, all the terrible seasons. We're the real fans.
If you think that you're the fan of something and you want to defend it, and you think somebody is showing up and trying to appropriate your fandom, ask them questions about the thing that you're a fan of last year. It's like, okay, you're a real Cincinnati fan. Yeah, I get you. Who was the quarterback last year? And when they can't answer, then you can stare at them and rightfully shun them for the remainder of the conversation.
That is the No True Scotsman dilemma. So let's talk about what the opposite of it is. I think it's an attitude of inclusiveness.
Oh, no, screw that noise.
You say you're a Bengals fan? Welcome. Glad to have you. You can be a Bengals fan. You're a Marvel fan? Okay. You're a nerd. You're a gamer? Welcome to the group. We accept everyone.
No.
All people are Scotsmen.
No. They didn't take their licks. I was talking about the abuse, the hazing that I endured to earn to earn my nerddom. And people just now being a nerd is cool, and it drives me nuts.
So you know this about me. I have a very strong ethic of short-circuiting the cycle of hazing. So, yeah.
All right, you want to be a Marvel fan, Ben? Are you a Marvel fan, Ben? Are you a real Marvel fan?
Sure, I'm a Marvel fan.
Go burn every DC property that you have in your house right now.
Wait, is that required?
Yes, for me. Those are my standards. Like, if you think that you're dedicated, then you need to shun the other.
Huh. I guess I'm not a true Marvel fan.
Then don't you come at me with your comic books no more.
All right, for Bad at English today, Josh, I want to talk about something that I've kind of been teasing for a long time. And when you told the story last time about how you bought for your wife a birthday gift, a 1 square foot of land in Scotland, so that she is now a lady of ye old British Empire, it made me want to really get to the bottom of this issue. So let me tell you what it is.
Okay.
Americans kind of have this vague awareness that the Queen of England still knights people. But obviously it doesn't mean anything like what it would have meant back in the days of chivalry, where a knight was necessarily someone of the physical abilities to defend the people with violence.
Oh, dude. No, knights were like a collective group of that ascribed to a set of ideals to be better in chivalry. And okay, so don't make me go down this medieval nerddom. I know way more about this than I probably should. But I know what you're saying. There was knights, and then there was knights.
Okay, so back to an American, 100 years is a long time. To a British person, 100 miles is a long way. So this is a great example. They've hung on to these things and kind of retained meaning, but have had to redefine them over the years as the old way of living in the medieval times no longer is relevant to today. So how do we still call people knights, and what does that mean?
Okay, Ben, tell me, what does that mean?
All right, so we were talking about this one time with my British friends, and I noticed that some of the people above me in the chain of command would put letters after their name that didn't have anything to do with the military, as far as I could tell.
Okay.
Are you aware of some of these letters?
I'm aware of, I have letters at the end of my name. Like, people put certifications and diplomas and education and different things after their names as part of, like, identifying themselves as...
Yes, like CPA.
Yes, there you go.
Okay, and we do that in America to kind of show that you've gotten a college degree, or that you've obtained a professional certification, or you've finished some rigorous course of study and residency, and you are now a medical doctor or a dentist or a certified public accountant, those kinds of things. Generally, that's what we utilize those for. Well, the British still have a system where they have basically kind of retained the past system of knights and chivalry, but now have a modern day iteration of it, and they use those letters after their names. There are like 10 orders of chivalry that still exist with various focuses, and one of the main ones is called the Order of the British Empire. And you can become a member of the... So there's 3 main ones. There's an MBE, an OBE, and a CBE. MBE stands for Member of the British Empire. OBE stands for Officer of the British Empire. And CBE is Commander of the British Empire. Now, just to give you an idea of how rare that is, there have only been 16 CBEs since the turn of the century.
Well, that's outstanding. Like, this is...
Like, less than 1 per year.
I've got goosebumps. This is awesome. Please continue.
Okay, so... They give these out for, let's see, these honors were created back in 1917 by King George V during World War I in order to reward civilians and servicemen for their contribution to the war effort. Nowadays, they recognize achievements or services to the community in any area. This can include the arts, charity, or education. And they're hierarchical. So a low-level achievement can get you an MBE, a higher level can get you an OBE, and the highest level can get you a CBE. Now, generally... it's considered par for the course if you become the equivalent of an 06 or a colonel that you get your OBE, and then that goes after your name. It only is announced twice a year in the London Gazette, which is the official newspaper of the Crown, on the Queen's birthday and her half birthday. So these come out twice a year. They come out with a list of nominees, and you can get your Order of the British Empire, Member of the British Empire, or Commander of the British Empire. Now, sometimes people will make a very political stance of rejecting this.
I don't need the approval of no authority. I'm going to continue to be great despite you telling me to.
Famously, in 1969, John Lennon of the Beatles, who at the time had become, a bit of a notorious hippie, returned his member of the British Empire to the crown in protest against British involvement in some war. It wasn't the Vietnam War; it was the Nigerian Civil War. Other famous members, David Bowie, who died recently, also rejected receiving an OBE.
Why?
Now,
who cares?
It's just a political statement. I can't even think of what a good example of that would be for us because we don't do this.
It's like if a president you disagree with or hated venomously offered to give you the Medal of Freedom. Like, you don't turn it down.
Yeah. Okay, so a good example of that that I can think of is when you retire in America, in the military, there's a process you can go through that'll just get you like one of these auto-generated letters from the president that thanks you for your service and has his signature at the bottom. And I could see somebody that really wanted to make a political statement saying, I don't want it if it's coming from our current president.
Whatever. I don't even think there's a bureaucratic switch that you can flick to turn that off.
Well, when I got my Eagle Scout award, somebody had gone through the trouble of doing this, and I got some letters like that. I think I have a letter from George Bush.
Cool.
The first. Yeah, okay. But it's nothing I would put in my signature block on my professional emails. But these, MBE, OBE, CB, they definitely put in their signature block after their name. If you get one of these, it goes in your signature block like for the rest of your life. It's a big deal.
This is interesting. What are some things that we should be putting in our signature block that we don't? I think Eagle Scout is a legitimate accomplishment. I think people that are Eagle Scouts have put in a ton of time, effort, blood, sweat, and tears into achieving that. That should be part of their professional accreditation.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of debates in the UK surrounding this because they feel like the remnants of these things also promote this classist conflict.
I hope all of our listeners could hear my eye roll when it happened.
Yeah. So then there's knighthood, which is similar, and it's along the same things. There's other orders. The British honors system has various orders, usually relating to the monarchy, military, and colonial officials, and that's where it gets a bit class warfare-y.
Well, are we still considered the colonies? Have the British not recognized that the revolution is over now? Are we still colonial? Can I get recognized as a colonial person by the British Crown?
So getting knighted is kind of above that. People can still become a sir. So it's sir if you're a knight and dame if you're a woman. So think of Elton John, who's now Sir Elton John, or Judi Dench, Dame Judi Dench. It refers to these orders of chivalry that you can get appointed to.
I can't believe you didn't go with Patrick Stewart first. It's Sir Patrick Stewart.
Okay, that's a great one. Yeah. That's all I have to say about that. So now that your wife is a British lady, that needs to be her next goal, is to become a member of the British Empire.
Yes. Oh, I love this idea. I'm going to surprise her with that, and she will hate it just as much as she hated her title of lady.
Great. So now we have to find out what you need to do to get that recognition and to take it on, like becoming an Eagle Scout.
I may follow up on that.
For our main segment this week, I sent you an article that was published in Task and Purpose, which is an online magazine focused mainly on the military community. And it kind of just got my mind started on a thing that started with the military and expanded out to everything I can think of. So the article was they had made an effort to go out onto social media and to poll military members across all the major social media platforms for stupid rules.
Yes, and it was just collecting all of the dumb things that military members have to live with. And, it was a treasure trove of nostalgia in the worst way possible. So thank you for that, Ben.
Yeah, you're welcome. So one thing people don't realize is that, in personal employment, you have the right to work and you also have the right to quit. But in order for the military to function, it can't be that easy. You got to be able to tell someone to charge into mortal danger and they can't just say no. So we have the Uniform Code of Military Justice that when you join the military, you agree to sacrifice some of your personal freedoms. Most of the time now we join voluntarily, and so you're basically volunteering to give those up. But sometimes we might even conscript people, and they're still subject to those same Uniform Code of Military Justice.
So I want a minor correction here. Ben said you give up some of your freedoms. When you join the military, you give up vast amounts of your freedoms. Let's just get that on the record.
Well, and stupid rules are one way that you definitely give up some of your freedoms. Because for the most part, if you don't like a stupid rule, you can just ignore it if they exist in society. Let's say, for instance, don't walk on the grass. If you're somewhere and there's a sign that says don't walk on the grass, you could just ignore the sign and walk on the grass. If someone sees you, what? They yell at you? They call the police? What if the police saw you walk on the grass? Will they arrest you?
You might get ticketed. Maybe. Depending.
Maybe. All right, but what happens in the military if you walk on the grass?
Oh, you get, yelled at. Punished.
You get yelled at. You could get non-judicial punishment. You could get your pay docked. You could have to work extra hours. You could be reduced in rank.
If you're a low-ranking airman, you're most likely going to get additional duties assigned to some landscaper to help them maintain the grass for the next month.
And that system of needing good order and discipline and having ultimate control over your life creates this environment that's rich for these stupid rules.
I don't miss it.
All right. So do you want to do every other one? Did you have some favorites on these lists?
For the military? No. So Before we dive into these, now I wanted to bring this up is because while, I think about my military time. It's like, oh, stupid rules that existed. Let me apply that to my memories of the military. And, the list overflows. It's one of those graphics of just scrolling text. But then I started trying to apply that to my civilian life ever since I've gotten out. And a few of them have come up, but there are far less because like you said, I'm allowed to ignore a lot of them.
Right.
But then what got me thinking really was then the idea of Chesterton's fence.
Yes, good. We introduced that a long time ago. Let's talk about it again.
Yes, so Chesterton's fence is this idea that if there is a rule, in this case, or if there is a fence, before you go tearing it down or attacking it, you should know the reason that it's there in the first place. And so I think I want to add a little subpart to this. Whenever we talk about one of these rules, I would also like to take a second and figure out if there's a Chesterton's fence that we can identify for that rule.
Great. I love it. Because that was one of the questions I asked myself is okay, so why did this rule exist in the first place? And sometimes there's a good reason, maybe sometimes not, but at least trying to understand is important. That's the idea of Chesterton's fence. Okay, so no walking on the grass frequently, the Chesterton's fence is because people are creating a desire path, maybe.
On the grass? No walking on the grass in the military. That's a stupid rule. Grass is made to be walked on. People have their yards made of grass. Professional sporting fields are made of grass. Grass is a thing that we cultivate to be trod upon. So why is there no trotting in the military? I mean, there's a bunch of stupid reasons that come to mind, but they are just all stupid. It's you're gonna get your shiny boots all dirty.
Yeah, you're right. You're just making them up at that point. I imagine the places where they do this, and I think this is probably more so in the Army or the Marine Corps or something, just never walking on the grass. Because in the Air Force, on the base I'm on, I can't even imagine that being a problem. There's no signs to that effect. It's just not a thing right now, at least on Barksdale Air Force Base. So this idea of not walking on the grass, can you imagine some, first sergeant or senior NCO just yelling at somebody from way far away, hey,
get off
what are you doing?
Yeah, I can totally see that. And also, you mentioned, the Army specifically, Army do have, big barracks full of dudes. The Army's thing is infantry. There's a lot of them.
Right.
And so if a lot of them were walking on the grass, then there wouldn't be grass for long. So that maybe I can understand.
Yeah, and then the thing I saw from this is that people will obey these rules when in the military, and that when they get out, it's become such an ingrained habit, and then they have weird habits that kind of stick with them for the rest of their life. Have you noticed any of these? Do you have any habits that have kind of been residual from your time in the military?
Do you know how many years it took me to embrace to my core that I am allowed to carry stuff in my right hand.
And why wouldn't you carry stuff in your right hand while you're in the military,
So
Josh?
if you're in the military, we are constantly being saluted or saluting our superiors. And so if you have something in your right hand, you can't properly render a respectful salute to either your subordinates or your superiors. And so you just don't carry anything in your right hand ever. Ever, ever.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, that's a good one. This one is interesting because some of these there's discrepancies between the services, and it's you can't have your hands in your pockets.
Yes, and that's because it's, I don't know, you look like a hoodlum? Unprofessional?
Hey,
I don't know. You need to always be ready to defend yourself.
That's definitely not it. Like, someone with their hands in their pockets can't draw their weapon. Yeah, I'm not carrying a weapon most of the time.
Let's just talk about pockets for a second, because the uniforms that I wore were just pockets for days. Just bestooned with pockets.
Dozens.
Yes, like
bestooned.
4 pockets on my shirt, like 6 pockets in my pants. But if your pockets are bulging, if you use these pockets for anything larger than a very slim notebook and a pen, boy howdy, are you in trouble. Like, we had a dedicated...
I've never had anyone say anything about that. What happened?
Oh, not to me, but I was... All right, so I might be inculcated with a little more of these stupid rules because I went to the academy.
Yeah.
So it was quite frequent and normal for you to have your pockets sewn down at the academy so your uniform would look better. It's like, oh, look at this ridiculous pocket that's bulging out. Sir, there is nothing in that pocket. It is an extra piece of material that is sewn to the outside of my pants that I have no control over how thick it is. It's like, well, that's ridiculous.
You just stumbled in a really interesting area, and that is sometimes the rules became so out of control that they do things that are actually counterproductive. Like sewing your pockets, that's technically against the rules to sew your pockets down.
I don't know if I was aware of that or not.
Yeah, so you're trying to obey the rules of appearing, well put together in uniform so much that you're doing things that are now breaking other rules.
Yeah, you're altering the uniform to make it look better and make it less useful.
Right, and it's supposed to be useful. It's a combat uniform, at least the one we're talking about. Now, here's an interesting one that I found that's definitely contradictory, is we have rules that mandate what color socks we must wear when we're in our combat uniform. And we also have rules that mandate that we must blouse our pants over the top of our boots so that never at any time could you see our socks.
Have you ever challenged this rule, Ben?
I absolutely have. These are Schrödinger socks. If I'm obeying the rule about blousing my pants, you can't know if I'm obeying the rule about what color socks I'm wearing.
I'm challenging you right now. When you go to work on Monday, I want every airman that you see, I want, show me your socks. You pull up your pant leg, show me your socks.
No, I'm not challenging that way. I mean, like, I wear pink socks underneath my boots, and no one knows.
So this was a thing with mess dress. If you ever wore the mess dress like the tuxedo, it was very normal because it's like a really fancy ruffled shirt with like French cuffs, but it has to be crystal pure white, like white as new fallen
snow. You got to slow down a bit. So people that don't know, we have lots of military uniforms. We have our combat uniform, we have our service uniform, and then we have an extra fancy like formal dinner uniform that's called mess dress. It's fancy white shirt, bow tie, fancy jacket, fancy pants, fancy shoes, little medals, dangly.
It's a military tuxedo. That's how you can think of it.
Okay, so yes, when you're wearing mess dress, you look on the exterior like you have this really nice, formal, perfect uniform.
But it is very common, so common that you can go online and buy these things, that you can buy a mess dress shirt that has the crystal pure white as snow cuffs, collar, and ruffles down the front center where it's going to show. But then it's like a full-on tie-dyed Hawaiian party shirt, every other scrap of fabric.
Everywhere that's covered by your jacket, so that then you can take off your jacket and now you are ready to party. They call them party shirts.
It's the closest thing to a mullet that exists in the military.
Yeah, and since we only wear these at formal dinners, and I got to tell you how shocking it was to me, Josh, because I did not know about this tradition until like my second or third dinner, formal military dinner I was at, and someone rang the bell and the master of ceremonies called everyone out and said, everyone that's got your party shirts on, let's see them. And about a dozen guys took their jackets off, and some of them were like camouflage, and some of them were rainbow colored. Some of them had like patterns of their favorite cartoon. It was all over the place, and I was I was flabbergasted.
So there you go. That's same thing with Schrodinger socks. It's Schrodinger shirts. So you've broken this rule, Ben? I have never worn the wrong socks ever. Like that's
really.
I mean, they issue you like 600 pairs of socks every time you go.
But you can't see them.
No, but they're big and comfy, and they're just like they're all one color.
Yeah. Okay. I don't break it on purpose. Like I'm not walking around thinking, "Haha, suckers! I'm breaking the rules." It's just like, oh, I forgot to do laundry this work, and my last pair of socks is gone. I'll just wear whatever else, and I'm wearing the wrong color.
Ben. Every time you deploy, they give you 12 pairs of socks. Where are all your boot socks, sir?
I don't know. I ran out.
What? Well, no words. Like, freaking go to the base uniform store and spend $2 and get 6 pairs of socks, will you?
I don't want 6 pairs of socks.
I still have so many pairs of boot socks in my drawer. I have more than 7 pairs of boot socks still in my house.
Yeah.
And
what do you keep them for? Like, what's the purpose in your mind that you might need them for?
Anytime I wear boots. Like, no, but like if I'm going to go work, if I'm wearing long pants or something and I need long socks. Like now,
you put on military boot socks.
If I'm going to be working. Now, like working in the garage or doing like physical labor, yeah, it's boot socks. If I'm wearing heavy duty shoes, I'm wearing heavy duty socks. That's how it is. But like I've gotten rid of most of my boot socks and I still have more than 7 pairs. I'm shocked that you don't have more socks.
Yeah. It's just the way it ended up. Okay, so another stupid rule that they have in the military is the things you can't do while you're walking.
All of them. You can't do anything while you're walking.
Yeah, you can't hold things in your right hand. You can't talk on the phone. You can't eat or drink.
You can't even chew gum. You can't be chewing.
Right. Yes, all those things are things you cannot do while you're walking in uniform. That is my favorite military rule to break, Josh.
I remember when they changed it to where you could talk on the phone in uniform outside as long as you weren't moving. And I thought that was a huge concession. Like, that's amazing. We can talk on the phone now.
They also had an exception for if you're talking about official military business.
You can walk and talk on official military business?
Yes.
Who's going to challenge that?
I don't know.
Excuse me, sir. Who are you talking to? Give me your phone. Excuse me, this is Master Sergeant Brownchild.
Take the phone from
Tell
him.
me exactly what your husband was just saying to
you. Yeah, wow. Okay, here's one that didn't so much happen in the Air Force, but it's happened in other branches of service, and that is wearing reflective belts.
Yes, apparently other services, because
got out of control.
Their camouflage is so good that they need to be more visible so they don't get hit by cars.
Right. They were getting hit by cars. They were running into other humans, whatever.
They were so camouflaged they just bumped into each other on the sidewalk and caused catastrophic physical harm.
So the Army in particular just really got out of control with this. In their physical fitness uniform and in their regular uniform, they were wearing reflective belts from their right shoulder to their left hip, not from their left shoulder to their right hip, across their chest like they were wearing a Miss America sash everywhere all the time.
I love that. I love that so
Even
much.
indoors.
I love that. Well, of course, indoors, you're not going to take it off. It's such a great fashion accessory. Let's talk about Chesterton's fence there, though. How many junior ranking enlisted Army guys had to die under the treads of a 2.5-ton truck being driven by a half-drunk other junior enlisted guy?
Before they were finally just like, all right, everyone wear reflective belts all the time, everywhere.
And then
when you're sleeping.
And then somebody drove the truck through the chow hall. Like, obviously we need to wear them inside too. So just leave them on.
Yeah.
No, the reflective belt one, like, yeah, it's stupid, but I am 100% certain there is a non-zero number of people that died because of that.
Yeah, you're probably right. It just like you said about Chesterton's fence, it's also like how many accidents have to happen in an intersection before they finally put up a traffic light or a stop sign. And there's also the military rule. They call it the rule of the diaper. Somebody poops their pants, everybody wears a diaper.
Also fondly known as ants with sledgehammers.
Wait, what's that?
You ever heard that? Killing ants with sledgehammers?
No. Go ahead. What's it mean?
It's just that. Killing ants with sledgehammers. Like, you have a small problem, and so you're going to drastically over respond to it.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, and these dumb rules also extend into the military physical fitness uniforms. It's mostly supposed to be comfortable clothing so that you can freely participate in, outdoor exercise without getting overheated and chafing, at the critical areas of your body.
Ben, I was deployed to Afghanistan in the years when you didn't have to tuck in your shirt in the PT uniform. Yes. And I was physically confronted by multiple Army NCOs telling me to tuck in my shirt. And I would respond, I don't have to, I'm in the Air Force, as is clearly stated by the giant reflective Air Force logo on my shirt. And they would tell me to my face, we don't care, you're setting a bad example for our troops.
Okay, so this is a great time to talk about that. So what is the opportunity cost of these things? What did they feel like they were losing? What bad thing did they think was going to happen if your PT shirt was not tucked into your shorts?
Okay.
Which in any person working out knows that's just not a good way to wear a shirt when you're wearing workout clothing.
So before I go into this, I do have to put this note to make sure I don't get murdered in the next 48 hours after this goes public. To all my Army brethren out there, I spent 6 months in Afghanistan deployed to an Army forward operating base and work in the Army life, and I feel for you. I really do. I'm very glad I joined the Air Force and not the Army because you guys got it rough. But I'm going to talk about how stupid the Army is for a second here, Ben.
Yeah. This is stupid rules. That's what we're talking about.
So one of the things I learned during that deployment was that if you didn't actively control Army guys, they would just start to wrestle. It didn't matter where you were, what the situation was. If they weren't standing in formation, at parade rest, they would all end up in a pile. And multiple times this happened where we're just standing around waiting for something to happen. And the next thing you know, there's 8 dudes in a pile in the gravel in the 108-degree heat. What are you idiots doing?
Giving each other noogies or something?
Yeah, throwing them into full-on sleeper holds and trying to actively murder each other. Not out of malice or spite, just out of pure machismo.
Excess testosterone.
Yes, just all the, we're such manly Army men. And it's you guys are such morons. Can you just not stand around your car for 5 minutes waiting for the sergeant to get back?
I've never seen this before. I've been assigned to Army units too.
I don't know what to tell you.
I was assigned to a cyber unit that was staffed by guardsmen who had civilian regular jobs.
There you go. You were surrounded by nerds. These guys were web developers in their spare time. Right, I'm around active duty, full-time, infantry Army who go kill the bad guys. It's sir, we're just waiting for the order to fix bayonets. But
so do they think tucking your shirt in keeps you from wrestling?
This is where
are you going with this?
This is where I'm going with this, is that if every second of every day is not strictly controlled on these wild mongrels, then they're going to descend into chaos almost instantly. And so any vestige, any glimpse of disorder that these sergeants saw, they had to quash with the fury of 1,000 suns, or else it would immediately spin out of control and destroy everything that they were trying to create.
Do you think that that's true?
Oh, I absolutely don't think that's true. I think that's ants with sledgehammers. I think they're doing it because their NCOs did it to them back in the day, and it turns into this circular hazing. This is the only way to control crazy nonsense.
So I hadn't written that down as one of the underlying causes of these stupid rules, but I agree with you that this cycle of hazing is definitely one of the motivators for stupid rules. So there's a lot more related to dress and appearance, but how would you group all the dress and appearance ones together? Because we have traditions. There are traditions that are disparate across the 4 branches of the service, and also ones that are disparate between us and other allied nations. And just saying if we don't have a high and tight haircut, the world will devolve into communism and no one will be free. It's just way too much on the slippery slope scale. What is the problem we're trying to deal with all the dress and appearance rules?
Well, I'm going to address your first question first. How you group together all the dress and appearance? Well, you group it together in 362903, obviously. But in a more general sense, why do we have such strict appearance protocols for military members? And
yeah,
Ben, I was a Standards and Evaluations NCO when I was at the academy. So when I was at the most uptight military college you can go to, I was selected to be the most uptight person in the uptight group of people, and I fulfilled that role with gusto. And every time people would ask, why are we so hard on the uniform stuff? like it was always canned answers. It was always the nonsense out of the first page of that regulation talking about, oh, we've got to look professional because we instill public trust with our immediate appearance. Like anytime there's a military member on the scene, like they're going to be looked towards for leadership and guidance because it is clear that they have their crap together just based on what they look like.
Yeah, so you are almost quoting it. So I have open here Air Force Instruction 362903, and it says, pride in an airman's personal appearance and wearing of the uniform greatly enhances esprit de corps essential to an effective military force. Therefore, it is important for all airmen to maintain a high standard of dress and personal appearance. The first 5 elements are neatness, cleanliness, safety, uniformity, and military image. The first 4 are absolute objective criteria. The 5th, military image, is subjective but necessary.
Yeah, that's the problem, is that what you look like, there are so many struggles because there are people that will completely 100% be following the regulation to the letter and still be completely and utterly unprofessional in it.
Yeah.
For example, this did not happen to me. I'm going to steal my wife's story. Apologies to Nicole already. But she was forced to tell one of her subordinates, like in a closed door conference, like pull her in the office and be like, listen, you need to go to the uniform store and you need to buy the next size up because you look ridiculous. Now, she didn't use those words. That's me saying those words. But
right. I'm sure she was much nicer than that.
Very much. She has a...
But that was the basic idea.
The idea is, yes, this person was way too heavy for the uniform that they were wearing and they needed to change it. For the whole big picture of why military people have to look like military people, man, I don't know. It's one of those things that it starts with like, oh, we're all going to wear the same clothes. Like, look back at like World War I and World War II. Guys got their heads shaved. They wore the shirts and the pants. And after that, it seemed like it was pretty loose. And it feels like the reins only ever get tighter on this stuff. It's like the mission crew.
Yeah. So some of those were about like the utility of it and the uniformity of it and the safety of it. And some of those things it really makes sense. And there's also kind of the code of conduct kind of thing here, which is we set ourselves apart from other people by looking like military people. Therefore, it clearly shows that we are combatants fighting on behalf of our nation.
I just realized we're trying way too hard. Do you know what this is? Do you know what this all boils down to?
Sure.
It's a lot cheaper to buy 6 million pairs of identical boots. That's what it is. And then now we're just stacking on all of these after the fact justifications for it.
I would believe that, Josh, if they didn't change the duty uniform 3 times in the last 20 years.
Now, to be fair, Ben, you're very old. Like, you've been in for a long time.
Okay, but for instance, when they transferred from the airman battle uniform to the Army optical camouflage pattern, they made us change our shirts from sand-colored to coyote brown, which are very similar and both look just fine with the uniform. They couldn't just let us wear our sand-colored shirts with our brown uniform.
Oh, no, that's 100% somebody in Washington, D.C. getting a kickback from the company that makes coyote brown shirts.
Yeah. Okay. Same with the boots. Haircuts. Okay, I got a great joke. Josh, when does an officer need a haircut?
A good officer never needs a haircut, Ben.
He doesn't. That's right. Shaving. You know, when I was in the UK, not even amongst the 4 branches, but I think the Royal Navy was allowed to grow beards, but the Air Force wasn't. And, you know, the Navy guys that had beards, they kept them trimmed. They looked professional. And frankly, it was really cool. Like, I was jealous of those guys.
Beards are in, Ben. I've been sporting a beard since I got out of the military.
Yeah. In fact, the beard that you're wearing right now would be perfectly acceptable in the Royal Navy.
Yeah, well trimmed, well groomed, not
Ahoy,
too far
mate.
from... Ahoy! Now, I want to talk about this for 1 second because I have a great anecdote from my time at the academy. There was a friend of mine who had some, like, lesion or something on his face while he was there, okay? And it was preventing him from shaving. And so he got a shaving waiver. This is a thing you go to a doctor, and the doctor says, yay.
I've had a shaving waiver my whole career.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
For real?
My entire career, since day one.
For what?
Pseudofolliculitis barbae.
Oh, you get the bumps when you shave.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Well, this guy had like a big thing on his face that was being treated, and he wasn't going to be able to shave for a full month. Okay?
That cracks me up that you didn't know.
You shave your head and not your face. Like, everything about your body hair makes no sense to me, Ben. All right, so listeners, another deep insight is Ben has this glorious head of hair. It grows in everywhere, and it's super thick and dark brown, and it looks luxurious. And me, meanwhile, am losing my hair in every way that you can, and it's turning gray, and it's super thin. And, like, he shaves his head bald with a razor just to mock me the person who's trying to have hair and can't. It's ridiculous.
All right, so your friend at the academy with the lesion on his face who got a shaving waiver.
He didn't shave for a month. And after a month, if you have not shaved, like, you have a beard. Like, not like, oh, he might be growing some stubble. No, he had a beard. And it was hilarious walking around with him because you couldn't take 10 steps with this kid without some NCO coming out of, like, the ground. I feel like they came out in full camouflage out of a bush and be like, "You, cadet, do you have a shaving waiver?"
Show it to me.
And yes, and he had it laminated in his pocket because he had to show it so often. And, like, his joke every time was when it's like, sir, no, I don't have a shaving waiver. You're the first person in a month that's asked me if I haven't shaved.
Yeah.
Like, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, there reaches a point where, like, oh, maybe he forgot to, like, it couldn't possibly be that long without somebody telling him. Like, you think that the number of people telling him would go down over time, not up.
Yes, exactly. But no, it didn't. They had him, produced that shaving waiver. I swear, Ben, I walked to dinner with him. We had to walk across a campus courtyard, and he was challenged 3 times.
Okay, so this survey and task and purpose, another thing I noticed, a rule that you'd mentioned from the academy, and apparently it's universal across the service academies, and some of them have worse sports teams than the Air Force Academy, was that it was mandatory that you attend the home football games.
It was mandatory.
They were talking about smuggling physics and chemistry textbooks into the game so that they could study because they knew that's what was going to get them in trouble.
Yep, I mean, that's the thing. I remember there was days, like, every home football game was mandatory, but not all of the basketball games. The only basketball games that were mandatory were the ones that were going to be televised, okay?
Wow.
And this is how they got us down here, Ben. Tell me this is not the most insidious thing you've ever heard of. They would close the chow hall for those nights and say, oh, dinner will be served at the arena. Like, and it's going to be free pizza for everybody. And you would walk into the arena and they would give you one slice of Domino's pizza that's been sitting there for 45 minutes. And then you were not allowed to leave until the basketball game was over.
That's terrible. All right. A few more, and then I think we'll be done with the military for now. Okay, this is a great somebody poops their pants, everybody wears a diaper rule. Have you ever had to use ground guides?
For if you're backing up or parallel parking a vehicle,
yes, and
somebody's got to jump out and do the standard unified hand signals for how to move the vehicle. Yep.
Yes. So that's a dumb one because they don't make exceptions to it. So you could be in the middle of a field, with no other cars around, and you're still required to have a ground guide if you're going backwards.
You ever have road guards, Ben?
That's for marching around.
Oh, that's not just for marching. That's for any time you're crossing a street in a large group.
They did not make you guys do road guards.
No, but it was funny to make the kids do it. Like, when I was a drone pilot, we had our squadron building was on one side of the street, and then the building that we actually flew in was on the other side of the street. And so it's like, all right, everybody, we're going to go to the briefing. Everybody get out of your desks and let's walk over and go do our job. And then we'd go over as a group. And then I'd always, like, pick, like, the youngest kid or the kid that had pissed me off that day. Be like, you, road guard, out, go! And just make him run out into traffic and then hold his arms up like an idiot while we all cross the street.
Yeah. Okay. So, did you ever deploy during the time when we were under what was called General Order 1?
Yes, I was deployed in Afghanistan under General Order 1.
Okay. So the tenets of General Order 1 were kind of around, I think, preventing stupid things that someone had done at some point in the past, and they just felt like it was too distracting. Like, hey, we're over there in the Middle East trying to fight a war, and people keep, raping each other and doing drugs, and that needs to stop. So we're going to make all these rules about how it's illegal to do those things, but then they made more rules around those rules until it just reached a point of ridiculousness. Yeah,
so for everybody that's not in the military, General Order 1, that sounds big, right? That sounds like something you'd see on a movie.
Yeah.
Like, execute General Order 1.
The very first and most important thing you can do.
And it's basically, it boils down to no alcohol, no drugs, no sex.
Right.
And
that's pretty much
my
it.
wife was telling me the other night, it actually doesn't say no sex. It says you can't be in the same domicile as the opposite gender.
Okay, that just made some really weird images flash through my mind. Thank you for that.
What? Okay, so at the...
Like two people meeting at the threshold of a domicile where only parts of them are touching and they're technically not in the same room.
So you're now giving me flashbacks to the academy because we had a version of that was implemented because the academy is co-ed, and so things happen. You put like 17 to 20-year-olds in a high stress environment and let them live together. like stuff's going to go down. So at one point, like when I finally graduated there, the rule was you could be in the same room as somebody of the opposite gender if all of the lights were on, all of the lights, including the desk lamps. The door was propped open.
Including the desk lamps.
The door was propped open, and you were not allowed to be on the same horizontal surface as that person.
Okay. Again, you're making me imagine these things. So you got a couple of horny people that want to have sex, and they can do it as long as it sounds like a sketch on Whose Line Is It Anyway?
So we got around this by hanging blankets over the propped open doors, and then one person would be on the horizontal surface, and the other person just wasn't. That's all.
So you were technically obeying the rules. Okay, yeah, so all of that was going on. A lot of that's gone away.
So I have another one of my wife's stories. She has the best stories because she works in HR, and she sees the scum of the earth all day, every day. I hope it doesn't affect her psyche. Nicole, I love you. But there's one story that is just stands out to me. Is she was one of the personnelists that was in charge of the Air Force people that were assigned to the Army downrange. Okay. And one of the problems was they had, I think it was 5 or 6 female Air Force members that were assigned to an Army unit, and they were given a tent. And it's standard. Like, everybody just lives in these tents.
Right. Keep them separate.
Yeah, they had their own tent. But the problem was one of them woke up in the middle of the night to the sight of one of the Army males just standing over one of the other cots. Like, just in the middle of the night, just standing there. And then when they were confronted, the person fled, and they had no idea who it was. And when my wife went and presented this to the Army, like, you need to do a better job protecting these female airmen, the Army's response was, oh, well, there's more than 3 of them. They can stand alternating watches.
What?
Yes, that was the first response.
No,
yes.
That's the worst.
Well, and then the Air Force response was, if you don't have an actual physical building with physical doors that have locks on them in the next week, we're taking all these people back from you. But that's the kind of crap that has to be dealt with in these scenarios.
Yeah. Okay, but now you're talking about the opposite, where they're like, there's the people in charge that are making the rules that are doing stupid, ridiculous things that actually aren't even contributing to the real goal of what the rules were for.
Yes. Oh, I mean, I don't know. Like, this is the problem with the militaries. These rules have existed for so long that you forget what the purpose of them was and what the implementation is supposed to be. Oh, I've got a great joke for that.
Okay.
There was a colonel that took over a squadron, and when he joined the squadron, there was 2 guards that were standing guard over the bench that prevented anyone from sitting on the bench that were standing there. And he's like, this is interesting. Why are these here? And he called the previous commander. He's like, hey, why are these guys there? And he's like, oh, they've always been there. It's a squadron tradition. My last commander was the one that had it implemented. So he tracked down the previous commander. The guy's in 06 now. Calls him like, hey, sir, why do we have people guarding the bench? Oh, it had always been that way. The commander that I had was guarding that bench too. You track that guy down, and he's like a general up in the headquarters. He calls him. He's like, oh, well, that's how it was when I took over command, and I just kept it for tradition's sake. And he tracked down that guy's commander, who was an old retired 4-star, and he calls the guy up in his nursing home in Florida, and he's like, sir, thank you for your service, but why did you have the bench guarded outside the building? And then the old retired general goes, what, is the paint still wet?
Well done. Man, that's a good one.
But
I like the little details, too.
But that's the kind of crap that we deal with in the military, is not just like we're talking about. Like, we have rules, and there's Chesterton's fence for some reason. But then, like 362903, we put on all this flowery language and all of this after-the-fact justification for why it exists, to the point where the actual legitimate reason of boots are cheaper when you buy them in bulk gets completely buried and forgotten, and it's obscured.
Yeah. Okay. Let's put the military aside for a minute. You mentioned that when you considered this topic, you asked yourself, what are some of the stupid rules I face now that I'm out of the military? What did you think of?
I have just a handful, and they're not very good, because most of the time in the civilian world, like, if there's a stupid rule in the way, people find ways around it, or they get rid of it, because money's on the line, and people make good decisions when money's on the line. But this one, I can't get around. Listeners, everyone, like, come with me for a second.
All right.
Every male that's listening to my voice, why do we subject ourselves to neckties?
Ooh, that was on my list too.
Really?
Yeah, because as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we wear our Sunday best. And that always means neckties. My own father rebels against this and wears bolo ties, but he's still making a concession to the fact that we're supposed to have something dangly hanging around our necks and choking
Bolo
us.
ties are the official tie of Arizona, so I 100% condone your father wearing a bolo tie. The only thing, this is literally the only, like, semi-real reason that I can possibly think of why we wear neckties is to cover up the buttons of the shirt. That's the only thing I can come up with.
Interesting. Yeah, and if you were to make like a time-lapse photo, you could kind of go back and see some form of the necktie long, long ago until at some point it wasn't there. I don't know. Big flowery collars in the Renaissance era.
Like kerchiefs around some gentleman's neck with the poofy lace and all that.
I heard an interesting study in a hospital where they're having problems with germ control and inadequate hand washing by doctors. And they also found out that neckties were a huge problem and they outlawed them because it's a garment that you wear that's right in front of you and almost never gets washed. And it's just a germ cesspool.
If ever I get like a visible stain on a necktie, it goes in a pile that I say, I'm going to take this to get it dry cleaned. And it never does. It dies there in that pile waiting to be dry cleaned because I have 100 other neckties.
Yeah, that was a great one. Well done. Any others that you thought of from me?
It sounds like you're gently prompting me because you were talking so long that you just want to break. That's fine. I can talk about more. So let's talk about professional writing for a second. Ben, I don't talk the way that I write.
Okay.
In my accounting firm of 5 people now, I am the one that writes most of the mass distributed documents and things that go out to our clients because as a previous military member, I have a lot of experience writing crap that sounds flowery and nice but doesn't mean a whole lot. But this is not just limited to the military. It's all professional writing. If you look at the way people talk, like you can pick any academic expert on anything and read one of their papers and then watch one of their TED Talks. Yeah, they still talk like an educated, well-spoken person, but nothing like the way they write.
Okay.
I don't know why, but we spend so much more effort and time training ourselves to write in this more pompous, bigger, flowery, or more verbose way than speaking. And I don't know if it's helping anybody. I think it just makes us sound smart.
Are you just talking about like salutations and closures? I mean,
stuff like everything from the fact, like if you're thinking about writing a paper in college and it had to be like, oh, well, you have to start with a clear thesis and then explain your ideas and boom, boom, boom. And then you have a clear wrap up at the end and a 3-act structure, blah, whatever. All the way down to you can't just write, hey, idiot, read the last thing I sent you. No, you delete that and then you retype it as per my last email. And then you re-explain the thing that this idiot hasn't read.
Weird Al wrote this brilliant song that the entire song is just like flowery business language chained together, about monetizing the assets and generating corporate synergies.
Ooh, I'm getting goosebumps again.
Yeah, it's good. I'll put a link in the show notes. But I feel like I have been able to adapt all those rules that you told me that you just talked about into just effective functional communication. Like most of the time when I send an email, other than the fact that it's got like my signature block on it, I use an appropriate greeting, a functional message that's kind of clearly states what I'm asking for, maybe makes a little bit of a poop sandwich, and then appropriate closing statement and fills the purpose. Try not to make it too long, get the job done, communicate clearly. I don't know. I don't get it. Give me an example of a transaction you have to do as an accountant where what you would have to write would be overly flowery, and if you were to call them and make that same transaction over the phone, it would be different.
I had a client where I'm going to do their business tax return for their S Corp, which is, I'm not going to get into, you get all your military acronyms, and I get all my accounting acronyms. Haha. They owe 2 tax returns, a business tax return and a personal tax return. And okay. I've got to do their business one. And I need specific information from their business. And I go into their accounting software and it's a mess. Like they haven't updated it in a couple of months. There's things that are in the wrong place. Like I can tell at a glance that if I was to use the numbers that this is spitting out at me right now, I would be misreporting their income to the IRS by tens of thousands of dollars.
Okay.
And so I've got to write them an email because because it was Saturday and I work on Saturdays during tax season. I'm not going to call them.
Right. They're not going to be in the office.
Well, yeah, and I'm not calling anybody on the weekend. I'm not like I'm not intruding on your time on the weekend. I don't want people to intrude on my time on the weekend. And two, I don't want to talk to people on the weekend. Like I don't want to talk to people ever. Like emails, just email, text me. Ugh, just text me.
That was such a great, succinct example. But wouldn't it be easier to call them?
Not on a Saturday. I'm not going to call them on a Saturday. So I had to spend time writing an email. It's multiple lines explaining, hey, these are some of the examples that I saw of things. This is why they could be impactful. Here are the steps that we need to take to get it all cleaned up. Here's what the cost is going to be. Here are the next steps. This is what I need from you next. Sincerely, whatever. If I had called them and be like, hey, we need to clean all this stuff up, it's going to be this much.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I'm on board with that one. You know, while you were talking about it, it reminded me of some of the areas in our society where we have these remnants of the past that we can't quite purge, even though we've transformed and changed. I was taking my writing class this week, and I got to the second to last unit, and it was telling, hey, you want to get started as a writer now that you've practiced all these skills and theory, and you want to put it to work, and you've written a good essay, and you want to submit it to a professional journal. Here's what you do. You write a cover letter that's on letterhead and has a formal salutation and a greeting and all this stuff, and you put it in an envelope and you lick a stamp and you send it to them and you wait 4 weeks and then you send them another letter, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like, I'm not doing this.
Well, that's right. Just talking about that, you said 2 words that make me realize another thing that exists in the world that is just stupid. Let's talk about cover letters and resumes, like the whole process that you go through selling this fake version of yourself to an employer in hopes that they will pay you to do a job.
And another one that made me think of that is all the traditions surrounding weddings.
Oh, okay, hang on.
That we send written invitations in the mail, and then you have to send written thank you notes and all those kinds of things. When for anything else in our life, even of equivalent magnitude, we don't do those. We don't do that.
Okay,
stuff.
now don't you start on weddings. Like I'm a big fan of weddings. Like weddings are prom for adults, so I don't I want that extra pump.
I like that prom for adults. Imagine if you were a high schooler and you wanted to invite a girl to prom and you had to send her an invitation in the mail.
No, but imagine if you had to buy her a specific kind of flower arrangement that you then put on her wrist that is a matching thing on your jacket. That's a thing that you do.
And so you give her a corsage. Now imagine that after the prom, she has to send you a thank you note, thanking you for the corsage, the awkward petting, and the broken heel on her shoe or whatever.
Ben, did you not get a thank you note for your prom date?
That was great.
I broke him.
Okay,
excellent.
I'll leave weddings alone. I brought that one into it. Okay, another one I thought of, and you kind of brought it up earlier when you were talking about your speeding tickets, is school safety or children's safety. You know, the way I described it to my mom when we were talking about this is if you could take a time-lapse photo of the stereotypical children's playground and you go back 5 decades.
That's a great example.
You have merry-go-rounds and tall metal slides and teeter-totters, and it's just a death trap.
I remember when I was in elementary school, we had a 25-foot tall solid steel twisty slide that would be at least 250 degrees in direct sunlight in Arizona. That was the coolest toy on the playground. It was so and everybody got hurt. Everybody got hurt.
Yes. So probably for good reason, those have gone away. But it hasn't stopped. My mom was a school teacher until she just retired a couple years ago, and she was talking about some of the duties she would have to do as playground monitor. And it's gotten to the point now where they won't even let children of different ages play on the same equipment at the same time. So if you continue this time lapse from 50 years ago today, you would see the playground, the number of pieces of equipment on the playground decreasing, the height of the slides getting shorter, the height of the swings getting shorter, certain pieces disappearing, other pieces appearing. If you could project that into the future, all of a sudden we'd have like a giant rubberized surface with like colored circles painted on the ground.
You're doing that uphill both ways thing that we were talking about earlier.
Yes, but it's happening. And we'd be like, all right, you kids can only play in this colored circle, and you can't touch the kids that are playing in that colored circle, and you also can't touch each other. Like, where does it stop?
Did you see one of the new one of the new Star Trek movies, one of the reboot movie, the original one, where they were showing Spock when he was growing up, going through Vulcan school?
Yes.
And each child was in an individual pit in this giant dark room being lectured by
surrounded by facts.
Yes. Like, that's what school is going to be. We're just going to isolate each individual child and like pour the knowledge into their head, and they'll never be subjected to bullying. No possible way that they could be emotionally or physically harmed because they're just in their protected little sphere of learning, and it's going to be great.
I go outside and do something fun almost every single day, and my kids would be happy to go a week without
going outside. Dude, outside sucks. Like, I don't know. Like, come back inside. We've got cool stuff now.
Well, today it was 68 degrees and sunny, and I went and did a round of disc golf, and it was glorious. Glorious. I had 2 birdies. It was just beautiful and serene, and I absolutely loved it. It was the best thing I did all day.
So I try to still maintain my physical activity. Like, I do like going outside. I like going out and getting a good run in. I like doing physical things. But at the same time, like, I'm a very indoorsy person, and maybe that's because I grew up in a ridiculously oppressively hot state. But I don't blame my kids if they want to take some of their glorious technology that they are now growing up with and just kind of sit inside and chill.
So you mentioned how you transitioned from being in the military and having all these stupid rules to be on the outside where there aren't quite as many or there's ways around them. But you also transitioned from a career working for the government in one way to a career working for the government in another way. Did you not have anything come to mind as far as related to tax law and all of the rules surrounding that?
Oh, most tax law is insanely complicated and stupid for the worst reasons that you can possibly imagine. Like, don't get me started on it, man.
So for the military, we have our base reasons like good order and discipline and, uniformity, saving costs. What are the reasons behind tax law?
My boss has a good explanation for this, and it's follow the money. Because tax law is directly related to money. Okay, here for an example. Oh, Lord, this is going to get really boring really fast. Let me try to boil it down. So every January, if you are a service professional in the world, you have received a random form from your customers, and you may or may not know why. You get this form called a 1099, and it has a number on it, and that number is how much you were paid by that person this year. So here's the thing, Ben. Why? Who cares? Why is there a requirement for businesses to send out these forms saying, hey, remember all that money I gave you last year? Well, this is how much it adds up to. And then finger guns, and that's it. Okay. So here's the thing. What it boils down to is the government got sick. This is the way I explain it to my clients. Like, the IRS got sick of businesses claiming like, oh yeah, I paid like all of these people for like consulting and like services, and this guy painted my house, and this guy cut all the grass, and these are all valid business expenses. So I'm going to deduct those from my taxes. And then the IRS not seeing any of that money being claimed as income, presumably by the people that did these things. So they said, we're sick of trying to go after random mom and pop shops out in the world. So businesses, listen up. If you don't fill out a form and say, this is exactly how much I paid you, Mr. Guy who painted my house, here's your name, here's your social security number, and here's your address, then we're not going to let you deduct this expense. Like, it's not a valid business expense unless you report it to both us and then provide a copy to that person. Because now the IRS on their side, it's like, I've got all these business expenses and I've got an identification number that I can point at and say like, hey, you Mr. House Painting Guy, you got a 1099 from whoever for painting his house. But the numbers on your tax return don't match up with the numbers on this form. What's up with that? You owe us some money.
That was a pretty interesting way to show following the money.
That's just one of like a million examples. And the problem is, this is my biggest problem with U.S. tax law, is that none of it is consistent. That is the underlying rule, is like the money is important, but like, oh, if we're talking about this deduction, then it phases out at these different ranges depending on if you're married or if you're not. Oh, but if we're talking about this other deduction, it only phases out if you are in the service industry that's specifically like accounting or medicine, but not if you're a plumber or if you're like a construction worker. And then the numbers are different depending on if you have 2 kids or 3 kids. And it's an unknowable quantity of rules that I have to enforce every year, and it just drives me nuts.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
That's why I get paid the big bucks, Ben.
So, having been around the world, I see examples of driving, and in some places, some of the things they do make a lot of sense, and we don't have those rules here, and sometimes we have rules that are stupid here. One, in Germany, it was mandatory to do what's called the zipper merge.
Yes, that should be a law here. Respect the zipper.
I think so, too. Yeah. And you're supposed to utilize every lane up until the last possible moment. Oh. So, because over there, the roads aren't sufficient capacity that if you have a blockage ahead and people do that thing where they merge too early and then there's just a big empty lane and the merge hasn't occurred left, and then you get that weird thing where people get road rage because someone's driving past them, you're required to utilize the lane up until the moment when it terminates, and then you have to do a 1-for-1 zipper. And it's just the perfect system for doing this. I don't know why we don't have this.
No, because this is America, and we have enough space to like stretch everything out. I'm in the 5th or 6th largest city in Phoenix, and if there is a freeway that's congested more than like an hour a day, they just slap more lanes on it. Like, yeah.
Have you ever been a place where you go somewhere new and maybe they knew the construction was going on, they have the merge ahead, and you get past the line of cars before you realize you were supposed to have merged already, and now you have to awkwardly try to get in? So what do you do at that point? Do you go all the way up to the front and just be like, whatever, I'm getting in, or you try to get in once you realize it?
The instant that I see that safety orange like blocking my lane, I'm trying to merge. I don't care if I'm 3 miles back. If I see like the blinking lights or whatever, the first indication that I am aware that this lane is going to end, I am merging as soon as possible. And then I have a good memory, so I will never be in that lane again in these circumstances. And then I curse out everybody in the future when I'm driving in the lane that doesn't terminate and they're in the one that does.
Yeah, I wish we just required full lane utilization and zipper merge, and all the problems
Ben, we can't figure out four-way stops in America. Like we have.
This is the United States of America. We can't figure out roundabouts either.
Let's talk about bad driving, because this is rife with stupid rules that exist because everybody. One person.
What are some other stupid rules?
Before we get into stupid rules, I've heard this before. Europeans have said that the only thing of value that Americans have contributed to global society is turning right on a red light.
Yeah, that's one where like, why are we waiting at this red light when there's no need? Right turns are low risk. Go ahead and go.
Yes. I may or may not have accidentally made left turns at red lights in the same circumstances, but that cannot be proved. So
the stupid rule part of that is the places where it's not permitted and there's no reason why not.
Clovis, New Mexico, where I used to live and work. In the middle of the night, because I worked night shift, I'd get off of work at 2 a.m. and I would drive home, and there would be a intersection with a light. There was like 2 traffic lights in the whole town.
And it was timed instead
of censored. It's 2 a.m. I am the only person awake for miles in any direction. But I've got to wait for this light to turn green because I know there's a cop somewhere that's going to throw me in jail if I don't.
Uh-huh. Stupid rule.
Oh,
I'm with you on that. I will ignore that rule in those situations.
I mean, red lights are like...
Like, I get what traffic lights are for, but I don't think they're infallible or immutable. Have you ever had that experience in life where you pull up behind someone and the traffic light is obviously malfunctioning, and it takes about 3 or 4 cycles of it not turning green for one direction before people start going, wait a minute, is this light ever going to change for me? And then you see how ingrained it is in people that they have to follow the rules.
Now, for the first one, this is the interesting idea with this, because this happened to me like probably a month ago. There was a malfunctioning light that just was never turning green, and there was a ton of traffic. This was like I live in a town where there's only 2 ways out of the town, and both of them involve getting on the freeway and going south. And so there's 2 lanes of traffic that are backed up, tons of cars waiting to get on the freeway, and the light that lets us onto the freeway is malfunctioning and just staying red solid, and there is no traffic coming from any other direction. And here's the thing. Exactly what you said happened for the first guy. He sat there way longer than he should have. Like multiple minutes went by. And this light is usually pretty quick, so it was clear that it was broken. And then finally, he timidly creeped out a few feet, and then a few more feet, and then finally just gunned it and shot through the intersection. And then after that, the first guy, like you said, hesitated, but the dam is broken. And everybody's just like, oh, the light must be broken. And so everybody that comes up behind him is just treating it like a 4-way stop and blowing right through that light.
As they should. As they should. And I think this is a good litmus test for whether or not a rule is stupid. Like, what is the consequence if you break it?
Well, the consequence of disobeying a red light could be death, depending on the circumstances of the traffic.
Okay, you just reminded me of 2 rules in the military I want to go back a bit. One is some branches of service are never allowed to carry an umbrella. I guess they decided that doesn't look uniform. The Air Force is, but the only person in the Marine Corps that's allowed to carry an umbrella is the guy standing behind the president.
Really? Huh.
He could hold it out over the president's head. Other than that, not. When I was in a joint assignment where we had Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines all working together at the same office, we had a change of command, and we were in the formation where you stand there and salute the new boss and the old boss. So we had to go to the practice in the hangar on the other side of the base, and we weren't allowed to bring our cars. And for whatever reason, we couldn't take the bus, and it was raining. And I was carrying an umbrella, and I looked over at my Army and Marine counterparts who were in their service dress and were getting rained on. I'm like, why didn't you guys bring an umbrella? And they're like, we're not allowed.
Like, wow, that's one more way your service sucks and mine makes sense.
Yeah. So we have these things like you were talking about with the traffic lights. If you're not allowed to carry an umbrella and then you need one and you don't have it, it just sucks and it's terrible. And if you always stop for a red light, but then there's a problem where stopping for a red light doesn't make sense, are we able to break it? Like,
so here's the thing: is because there's a reason that there's a red light here. Yes, in the circumstances that I was in, there was no traffic coming the other directions, and so it was fine to treat it like a 4-way stop. You roll up, you look at the light, and then you go. Here's the problem: the people that are coming the other directions don't know the light is broken. All they know is they've got a green light and they've got the right of way, and that's when things
could be a big
that's
problem.
When things fall apart. Is because everybody that's in this line is like, oh, the light's broken. I'm just going to blow through this whole thing. But the other people don't know that.
That's why lights are supposed to fail closed. Like, if something goes wrong in this circuit, they're programmed to be like, all right, I don't know what's going on. All 4 directions are a 4-way stop now. And we'll let the people sort it out.
Now, the way this thing failed, I guess, is the car sensor for where we were sitting was broken and was not reporting its broken state to the computer.
I see. But have you ever seen one of those horrific videos on the internet where, like, someone pulls up to a train crossing, the lights flash, the gates go down, no train comes, then the gates go back up, and then as soon as the gates are up and the lights stop, then a train goes by at like 100 miles an hour?
No, I see the videos where the lights are flashing and the gates are down, and there's some moron that's trying to get his bicycle or his car through them so he could beat the train across the intersection.
All right, I'll post an example of each. But yes, those ones are much more frequent. Are you part of a homeowners association?
I am part of a homeowners association.
Those things are rife with stupid rules. What ones do you have for that?
I get a notice from the homeowners association at least twice a year. Because
for what, Josh?
So my homeowners association, one, requires that I have X number of bushes in my yard at all times that are well maintained and cared for.
No, they count the number of bushes in your yard?
Including the backyard. Yes. Yes, what? I'm required to have many not topiaries, but like actual green things because we want to maintain a pleasant area. Ben.
But are they worried you're going to run out of oxygen? What do they care about your backyard?
We're talking about stupid rules. I'm not defending the stupid rules.
Okay, you're right. That is a great example of
that's not even the stupid rule. Like, the one that I get notified on is not the bushes. I have the prerequisite number of bushes. Like, count my flare. I have 36 pieces of flare. But they want all the bushes to be green and growing. And sometimes there is a green bush that is green and grows a little too much. And you can't clearly identify my house number from the street. And that's sacrilegious. And so I get a notice like, hey, Mr. Person at this house, I can't read your house number. How dare you? Trim that bush.
Wow. Okay. Well, those are stupid rules. I don't know. I'm a renter, so I don't know if there is a homeowners association. I guess I'm complying enough that no one's giving me angry letters.
Nice. Homeowners associations are really stupid. Yes. We also have a pallet. There is all the local paint stores. If you go there, they have like a little display that is set up that was made for them by the homeowners association, outlining the exact shades and the groupings of the shades that you're allowed to have on your house if you're going to paint it.
Wow. Well, at least they're helping you obey the stupid rules in a way that will comply. It's the worst when, like, the local, an example is kids' school supply things. They're like, you have to get a 3-ring binder, but it can't have D-shaped rings and it has to hinge on the side. And then you go to like 3 stores in the local area and none of them have it. So you just get the closest thing. You're like, nope, you got the wrong thing.
And that's when you call the teacher and it's like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you had any level of authority over me whatsoever. My son has the thing. Stop calling me.
Yeah, I feel bad when my kid becomes the punching bag for that kind of stuff.
The pariah, like in the classroom.
Yes.
Like, is his 3rd or 4th grade teacher looking down at him? Is like, your parents don't love you enough to get the correct school supplies.
Well, but like you said, if the homeowners association is going to require that, then they set up a cooperative with the local home improvement store and made it easy for you to comply. That's great. Like, I love when I go to the local store to buy the kids' school supplies and they have it all set aside and say, here's what you need for this school.
Yeah, but it's slightly annoying when you go to the home improvement store and they have every shade of color imaginable to the human imagination and some that you can't conceive of.
You can only choose from.
Oh, wait, hang on a second. You live in that town. Okay, no, you have this. You can select everything on this shelf between the chiclets and the erasers. Like,
it's the Model T Ford of home numbers.
One more stupid homeowner association while we're on the topic. There was a huge to-do a couple years back. Like, it was the gossip in town because the homeowners association was trying to crack down on a guy because he had. There's a lot of people in their backyards. They have those hanging lights, and you've seen them. You have like steel cable, or whatever, and they have really nice lights that run on the steel cable.
My parents have them. I love them.
Oh, it's great. Outdoor illumination is just so nice out there. And they were getting on this person because, one, they were in his backyard, but you can see them from the front of his house. And 2, they were calling them holiday lights that he had to take down because we have very strict times when we are allowed to have holiday lights up.
That's an interesting subcategory of stupid rules. It's like, I don't like what you're doing, and there's actually no rule against what you're doing, but it's close enough to something else that's not allowed, so I'm going to call it.
Yes, and this is, I would really like to have those lights, but not in my backyard. I want them in my front courtyard. I have a really nice little courtyard area in front of my house.
I mean, that's how we got Al Capone.
I'm sorry. I'm talking about like lights on my house, and you went straight to organized crime families. Please fill in the steps between those two things, will you?
I was thinking about using stupid rules to like nail somebody because you don't like what they're doing, even though what they're doing is not illegal.
Oh, I took a whole class on how to do the taxes for people that are doing illegal activities.
What?
Yeah. Marijuana dispensaries are legal in my state of Arizona, but marijuana is still federally illegal. But the IRS doesn't care. The IRS is not a law enforcement agency. They are a tax collection agency. So they put out instructions and guidelines for how to prepare and report the taxes of an illegal activity.
Okay, that was fascinating.
Yeah, it's actually kind of crap because at the federal level, marijuana dispensaries aren't allowed to deduct any business expenses. You are required by law to report 100% of every cent that you take in, but you are not allowed to deduct any of the normal business expenses that every other business on the planet gets, regardless of the legality in your state.
Wow.
This is the same reason that they can't... marijuana dispensaries are robbed left and right, and they have the tightest security ever because they cannot... process credit cards or take checks. They have to work in cash because no banks will take their money because it's an illegal federal activity. And if the bank takes illegal funds, they lose their FDIC insurance.
Yeah. What a morass. What a hard place to be in if that's your business. I mean, what do you do?
You run a marijuana dispensary that just rakes in actual hard physical currency, and presumably, I don't do any taxes for marijuana dispensaries, but presumably you report like, I don't know, 20% of it to the IRS.
Yeah. In Italy, the effective income tax rate on citizens was like 60% or something like that. I remember when I got really close with my friend that owned an auto garage, I asked him, "How do you deal with that, Andrea? Like, how do you cope with the fact that 60 cents of every euro you make goes to the Italian government?" And he's like, "I just think of it like up until August, I'm working for them, and after that, I'm working for me."
No, he just doesn't report half of the money he makes.
Yeah, that's part of it. They did something interesting in Italy where they would actually put the burden of proof for paying sales tax on the purchaser rather than the seller.
Paying the sales tax?
Yes. So they would have inspectors that would wander around town. They would see somebody come out of a store with an item, and then they would have to produce a receipt that showed that they had paid sales tax or they had committed a crime.
That is so backwards. Holy crap.
It kind of is. But you know, where you place the burden of proof can influence the adherence. Because I told you, frequently there was cash under the table kind of deals because they knew I wasn't subject to those rules as an outsider.
They changed this in my state. Actually, I know quite a bit about this. Talking specifically about sales tax. In Arizona, we call it transaction privilege tax because we don't have sales tax. I don't know why. That's a political thing. It's TPT.
Not calling it sales tax makes it not sales tax?
Yeah, it's totally not sales tax. It's TPT. Exactly the same thing, and everybody calls it sales tax, whatever. Uh-huh. But when I was a pool guy, I remember when I first started, you were required as a pool guy. Like, you would have to buy your stuff at the wholesaler, and it was tax-free, but then you had to charge sales tax to your customers. And then I had to file a report with every city that I did business in. Like, this is the sales that I made. Here's the sales tax I charged. And here's the check for the sales tax that goes to you. But then they changed it because they consolidated. Because exactly the same thing happened. Is people were buying this stuff tax-free at the wholesalers. The wholesalers were reporting their sales to the government. And then the government wasn't seeing not even a fifth of that come back in sales tax. You know what I mean? Because people like me, like, I didn't go to a class. I didn't know that I had to charge sales tax. I tracked it down myself doing my own due diligence. So they changed it and they backed it up to the wholesaler. And there was one day I went into my wholesaler and they said, "Hey, you need to give us a form that says you have sales tax licenses in the cities that you work in, or you can start paying sales tax here, and then you don't have to report your sales tax anymore." And I was like, "Oh, so you're telling me that you're going to take 5 reports that I have to do and write checks for every month off of my plate if I just pay you the sales tax and then upcharge my customers whatever I feel like?" Yeah,
that feels like that space on the Monopoly board where you can pay 10% or $75.
Kind of. It is kind of. And like all of the wholesalers, it's exactly the same way. There's a form you can fill out to say, "I am going to charge my people sales tax, so you don't charge me sales tax." Sales tax only gets charged once. They don't care. The government doesn't care where it gets charged, either at the wholesalers or at the retailer. But here's the thing. It's a heck of a lot easier on the individual guy like me to just be like, "I'll pay the sales tax. Screw it. That's easy."
That feels like, I don't know, like the Cayman Islands or something where they do a lot of banking there because they can help you get around international things. Be like, you know, you don't have to pay all them. You can just say you do business in our country and we'll just charge you this small amount, and then they draw business into their country.
It's kind of the same thing. Like the government doesn't care a lot of times where the money's coming from as long as they're getting it. And so in this situation, they figured out a way to make it easier for the individuals to comply with the law.
Yeah. All right. Well, no discussion about stupid rules is complete without discussing the Transportation Security Administration.
Oh, TSA, you all are the dumbest people. No, I'm not saying that. That's wrong. I am immediately retracting that. You work for the dumbest bureaucratic organization that exists.
September 11th changed the world, but it just got out of control. So fast.
You can't bring water through this security checkpoint, but I can buy water right there. It's 3 feet from me. Yes, but that water that you're carrying could be laced with who even knows what kinds of chemicals.
Well, here's the thing. You're allowed to carry a baggie with no container in it being more than 3.4 ounces. If you bring a tube of toothpaste through that's a 7-ounce tube of toothpaste but more than half used, it obviously has less than 3.4 ounces. But because it's a 7-ounce tube of toothpaste, it's not allowed.
So I'm going to chalk this whole thing up to the idea that the TSA's rules have to be implemented by not the best people in the world. And so they have to make it absolutely black and white in order to there's no defense. There is no discussion. There is no argument to be had at the security checkpoint. You failed to obey the rules. It's going in the trash.
Okay, so let's say you wanted to bring, the example you gave was a 20-ounce bottle of water. You want to bring a 20-ounce bottle of water through the checkpoint. Let's say instead you took that same 20 ounces of water and you put it in 7 3-ounce bottles in a baggie. You can now bring it through the checkpoint.
Yes. The first time I ran against the TSA, I was flying somewhere, and in my bag, I'd forgotten. I had one of those blue scissors, and you know what I'm talking about. At every military base on the planet, they sell exactly the same pair of blue scissors. They got like blue plastic handles, and they're about, they're normal scissors. They're scissors.
Yeah, like 4-inch blades.
And they're good scissors. I have at least 5 pairs in my house in various rooms. Like when I was in the military, every time.
So they pull this out of your bag, and you're like, oh my gosh.
Like, oh, I forgot I had those in there. And I'm like, what are you trying to do? And they like confronted me like, whoa, I forgot I had scissors. Take them. They're yours. I don't need the scissors on this trip. And they're like, well, you need to do something with these scissors. I'm like, just take them from me. Like, no, these are your scissors. You have to do something. Like, what are my options? Well, you can mail them to yourself. Like, what? Like, we can give you an envelope and you can write your address and you can mail them to yourself. I'm like, or what? Or you can't get through this checkpoint. Okay. Hand me the scissors. And they handed me the scissors, and I moved my arm 45 degrees and dropped it in the trash. I'm like, I no longer have scissors. Can I go?
Yeah. Good. Definitely low opportunity cost there, as opposed to taking on the man. They were expecting you to put up a fight, I think.
It sounded like it. Apparently somebody fought really hard for their scissors.
There's the shoes thing, whether or not you can wear your shoes. And luckily, we finally reached the point where some of these are starting to get pulled back a bit.
All right, if we're going to complain about TSA, we can't complain about TSA without complaining about people who don't comply with TSA. Ladies and gentlemen, TSA has been a thing for almost 20 years now.
Well, they existed before that, but you're talking about all the current regulations and increased security.
Thanks, Mr. Technically Correct. Yes, that is what I'm talking about. Listen, stupid guy in line in front of me. Yes, you do have to take your shoes off. Don't argue with him. Don't have a conversation. Don't make him tell you to take your shoes off. Everybody knows this. Everybody knows this. They've got the video playing. You've been in line for 20 minutes. They've told you to take your shoes off 100 times. Take your shoes off.
Yeah, and whatever the line between the TSA and the FAA is, I don't even care. I just get so sick of all of it because it feels all the same.
Oh,
we got to watch the same security video, and they care about whether my tray table's up, and they, and it's just on. And all the rules about that you can't have electronic devices on when the plane's taking off or landing. Like
they might, your tiny device that puts out less than a watt of power to deliver music to your ear holes may interfere with the air traffic control and landing systems of this multi-billion-dollar airport.
Okay, so let's apply the Chesterton defense principle. I looked this up. I found an article in Scientific American. Do you know how many reported cases there are of any problems with takeoff or landing due to personal electronic devices?
In the last 30 years, I'll say 0.
0.
Yeah, but before that, we're talking about phones that were the size of suitcases that had like the broadcasting power to like talk to the moon. I can see those.
Not only that, and here's the worst part about having rules like that: how can they even know if I turn off my phone or I turn off my headphones or I turn off my Kindle? They can't know.
Is this confession time?
It's like my socks in my boots.
It is Schrodinger's.
It's Schrodinger's electronic device on the airplane.
Schrodinger's playlist. Ben, I have never, nor will I ever, turn off my headphones or my music when I'm on an airplane. Like, everybody turn off your electronic devices. I just close my eyes, pretend I'm sleeping, and I'm listening to music the whole flight. I don't care.
Yep. Yeah. Same. Yeah. Yes. Okay. All right. That was enough of a TSA rant.
No, there's so much more we can rant about the TSA, Ben.
Before we wrap it up, I also realized that I needed to consider church rules. And then I had a problem, Josh. Let me tell you about my problem. So this started off with an article about the military where we mock the military endlessly and we laugh at their silly, outdated, redundant, stupid rules. And then I tried to think about my church, and I immediately saw all my sacred cows.
Oh, well, we can't be making fun of the church. All of these are tenets of, like, the faith that I put into the universe. Like, oh, we can't possibly be poking fun at the weird things that you believe, Ben.
Yeah, so I tried to make a list. I tried hard to come up with some that I think are the
You
stupid
tried
ones.
hard? Oh, buddy, like, I know nothing about your faith, and I've got a laundry list that we can start throwing at you. This is going to be fun. I'm going to like this next segment. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so obviously, just like in the military, there's the standard, not requirements, but expectations for what constitutes proper dress and appearance. Yep. None of those are actually theologically sound. Like when we have the young men that provide the communion or the sacrament, as we call it, to the congregation, they're expected to wear a white shirt and a tie and dark suit of some sort. That's not in the scriptures anywhere. It's not required anywhere. It's not necessary anywhere, but it's enforced pretty strictly all around the church.
Are you wearing a white undershirt right now, Ben?
Yes.
Well, there you go. Why?
I'll post a video. I can't describe it as eloquently. I'll put a video in the show notes if you want to answer that.
That is kicking the can to somebody else's problem like so hard.
No, that one. Okay. I'll say the rules about what you can and can't wear when you're passing the sacrament are not as strict as the rules about why I'm wearing a white shirt right now. Actually, there are specific rules surrounding that. Okay.
So wait, hang on a second. Hey, no. We don't get to blow this one off that fast. So why is that one dumb and the one why is the suits wearing of the passing of the congregation important and a stupid rule? Okay. But the fact that you're wearing a white shirt right now, no,
I can answer the question. Answer the question. I'm making a distinction between rules that are cultural expectations that are not formal rules and rules that are formal rules that are very specifically agreed to.
You agreed to wear a white shirt. You have the sign on the line when you went into the LDS faith?
Kinda. It's called a covenant, but yes. There's a ceremony in the church where you make a covenant to agree to wear what's called the temple garment. I have it on. I made a covenant and I agreed to wear it. There's rules surrounding it. I agreed to the rules. That's different than like, I don't like what that guy's wearing when he's doing this. He didn't do that.
If you put on a black undershirt, does it like burn? Does it sizzle against your skin?
All right. Some other ones that are kind of in the church, like sometimes people, when they come, they sit in the same place every week on the pews. Like, that's not a rule, but if you sit in someone else's pew, it throws everybody off.
You're not that person, are you? All right, so any kind of environment you go to where you have a set group of people, like formal education is the one. Like, you've been to a bunch of military education things where you go for a week or two and you're going to like learn something from a guy.
Yeah, and you always sit in the same place, and then if you come in and somebody's sitting in your spot, they violate the rule.
Yes, you sit in
that's a stupid rule.
You sit in exact don't
stupid rule.
I'm on the hill. I'm against you on this one. Like we are creatures of habit, and this is a whole new environment, and all these crazy things going on. It has to be consistent,
especially in church. Because in the military environment, it's going to be a homogenous group of people. In church, it fluctuates a little bit week to week. So let's say, for instance, I just had a newborn baby, and we have a tradition, just like they do in a lot of churches. When a new baby comes, you have some kind of ceremony welcoming them to the world in the church. So we'd have a blessing ceremony. And typically, it's traditional that when something like that happens, that any family, extended family in the area comes and attends church with you that day so they could be there for the ceremony. So now my normal footprint of my family in the church increases from 8 to 16 or 20.
Well, they sit.
Where do they sit?
In the transient seats, obviously, because you're going to have these all the time.
No, they sit by us, and that displaces someone else. If I come in and someone's sitting in my seat because they're there because their family's blessing their baby, and I get all bent out of shape out of it, everybody's missing the whole point of being in church. That is a stupid rule.
I like that rule because I am I have to have some sense of normalcy wherever I go, and I'm going to sit in the same spot. Ben, I order the same food when I go to restaurants. I sit in the same seats.
All right, complete this phrase, Josh. Flexibility is...
stupid and overrated.
No. Flexibility is the key to air power. It's also the key to being a good follower of Christ.
I actually say flexibility is the key to air power to people. But I say that, and at the same time, every Wednesday I go to the same pizza joint for food, and I sit in the same chair, and I order the same meal.
All right, let me tell you some more stupid rules. What constitutes swearing?
Oh, do you want me to run off a list? All right, get your... Because swearing is inherently a cultural thing.
Yes. And kind of arbitrary.
Incredibly arbitrary. All words are arbitrary, Ben. We made up all of these stupid sounds.
It's important as a group that we're making an effort to elevate our speech to something holier in respect as we gather in worship of a deity. But you don't need to get bent out of shape if somebody says one of the forbidden words.
You are losing a lot of flexibility not having the F word in your active vocabulary. It fits in so many places.
At least not at church. I think that's enough sacred cows.
Oh, sacred cows? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah. Well, no. We were talking about stupid rules, and I took some time to list a few from my church.
Well, I feel like I beat up on the LDS community enough, and the fact that a lot of them are our listeners. I'll let it pass, and we'll just move along then.
Okay, so let's go to the bottom line. So I was asking, okay, so we got these stupid rules. Like you said, Chesterton's fence, sometimes you need to ask why they exist and figure it out. Sometimes we're enforcing standards because it's important to standardize things. Like, I don't know if it's important that you standardize what people's house numbers look like, but I guess you could make a justification about, the mailman or the UPS guy, or if there's a fire truck responding or whatever, it's important that people be able to read your house numbers.
Like, if we're talking about why stupid rules exist, it boils down to the fact that the rules are created in order to fight entropy. The universe is constantly fighting to destroy us and break us down into the simplest pieces that we can be. And this is just the highest level of trying to maintain order in society. We have to have these rules. And if the rule is stupid, that is because it is for stupid people. And if you take any population, any statistical population, there's going to be people that are so dumb that they have no right to exist on this earth. And they would get eaten by street sweepers if it wasn't for the rules keeping them safe. And so that's where all these come from, is there are people that are so bad at living, they have to have these rules to maintain their existence.
I get it. And there's the slippery slope argument and the opportunity cost argument. It'd be like, well, if we just let anyone in our neighborhood put any house number they want on their house, it would just be crazy. And then nobody would know where anything was. I mean, what's the worst that can happen?
That's interesting. I'm going to put up, identical placards of my house number with, different numbers on them. I'm going to have, 10. I'm just going to put them on both sides of my garage.
What if they put it up in Comic Sans MS?
What if they put it upside down? What if he paints his front door purple? Yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So, good order and discipline, safety, decency. Somebody did something stupid and ruined it for everyone. People are dumb and make bad decisions, so we have to protect them from themselves. Why do you hate nuclear surety? Entropy. All these are reasons that all these exist. Audience, here's where I want to end with this. Sometimes they're just stupid rules. Maybe now that you understand Chesterton's fence, you know that it should be torn down. It's outdated, it's redundant, it's unnecessary. So what do? So here's 5 things you can do. You can defy the rule. You can appeal the rule. You can consolidate rules. You can gain enough power that the rules are no longer relevant for you, or you can supersede the rules.
How are those last two different?
I'm trying to think of a good example. I can't. Man, I'm just drawing a blank. What was I thinking? Ben, what were you thinking when you wrote this down? So obviously defying the rules is just okay, it's the middle of the night in Clovis, New Mexico, and I'm going to run this red light. I'm just defying it. There's no fixing it. You can go to the town council and ask them to make the light so that it favors the direction you're going in the middle of the night, but that's probably not going anywhere. Appealing it's not going to help it. They're not going to consolidate it. You can't gain enough. You can't. I guess you could be a police officer and then you could turn on your lights and go through the intersection. Then technically you're not breaking the rules. That's gaining power. Superseding is red lights no longer apply.
I take a helicopter to work.
Right. There you go.
I could do that.
So that's an example of all 5 things in that situation.
Nice. Well done, Ben. You might want to edit out that silence.
Well,
listen, if anybody's listening, the silence for Ben thinking of that example was 5 full minutes. Like, it was really bad.
Okay, so I'll put in some elevator music or something. Audience, if you're listening to this and you thought of some stupid rules that we didn't think of, we want to hear what they are. So go on the subreddit, open thread for this episode, or go on our Facebook page and tell us what are your stupid rules that you face and how you're going to defy, appeal, consolidate, gain power, or supersede those stupid rules.
If you like what we do, consider sharing us with a friend. I mean, if you like what we talk about, maybe your friends will like us too. If you really want to show us some love, consider taking your phone out of your pocket and giving us a good rating on the podcast player of your choice. It is ridiculous the amount of visibility we get on that. Lastly, if you want me to heckle Ben for not being able to come up with ideas on the spot, live on the podcast, consider becoming a patron on our Patreon page.
And until next time, try to be a little less bad at magic.